Hi, welcome to Focus on Finance. I'm your host, Melanie Parker. Glad to have you. Today we're going to be talking about interview skills, and that could start from age 15, I guess some folks hire at 15, all the way up to starting a second career later down the road. I'm excited today to have our guest, Rick Whobrey. Welcome.
It's my
Glad
pleasure.
to have you. You want to share a little bit of your background?
Melanie, I spent 29 years as an executive of a very large farm organization in Kentucky. I then was the first executive director of the newly formed Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame.
Great.
And since then, semi-retired to do a little substitute teaching and trying to mentor some young people in areas like this.
Substitute teaching is not easy.
Oh, I have a ball at it. It's the kids are.
It's a special skill set, I'm sure.
It certainly
I can't
is.
imagine. What ages?
I've had everything from preschool to 8th grade.
Oh my gosh.
Wonderful.
God bless you, man.
Really neat. They're really neat.
Awesome. Well, and it sounds like through your experience in the background, you've had the opportunity to interview probably different age groups, and that's why I asked you to join us today. We're very interested in talking about the skills that you need to interview to get a position. So let's start at the very beginning, actually where to look to find something. What do you suggest?
Well, surely. Today there are so many websites that you can search by location, by area of interest, by your educational training, all kinds of categories that allows you to search these websites. But also the personal network of contacts we have
especially in our community,
exactly,
right?
is often overlooked. And when people hear that, they immediately think, well, I'm going to ask my aunt and my cousin and my next door neighbor, and that's not what it means.
Right.
Nor does it mean you walk through the mall and say, I'm Melanie and I'm looking for a job. That's not what it is.
That's how we did it back in the 80s when I started looking for a job. Things have changed.
If you're an electrician, if you're an engineer, a social worker, whatever your interest level, education level training is, you may not know the persons who hire or make those kind of decisions.
Sure.
But if you'll find a quiet place and make a list of people you know who may know those type folks, who may operate within a network of those professionals, that's who you really need to help. And generally that group's no more than 3 or 4 people.
Right.
But don't be afraid ever to let the right people know that you're looking.
Sure.
And that goes from high school graduates looking for or high school students looking for a summer job, recent college graduates looking for a career, or more seasoned employees who, for whatever reason, have been the company's been downsized, outsourced, restructured, simply let go, a change in administration, whatever it is.
Looking for a new adventure.
Sure.
And that's how it happens. My fellow was he's an electrician and a plumber. He was on a job site recently, and the fellow who owns the house, turns out, owns a company, and started talking to him about his skills, and he now works for him.
And those more seasoned folks who are back in the mix, the rules and the procedures have all changed.
Right.
Just a decade or 2 ago. It's all different now. And becoming familiar with it and comfortable with the process, it goes a long way.
Sure. And some of the more seasoned folks, it looks like if you go to Sam's Club, they have their little hire center right there online. Kroger does online. Most places now you have to go online, and some of the seasoned folks may not be comfortable doing that, but it's really nothing to be afraid of. It's quite a simple process.
Surely it is. And probably the last couple years that I was pretty intensely interviewing people. All ages, all educational backgrounds, all kinds of positions from entry-level folks to vice president level. But the last couple of years, I just noticed a decline, a deterioration in interview skills.
Oh, yes.
Just soft skills.
Right.
Things that maybe years ago we took for granted that everyone knew.
Right.
It just began to erode.
Well,
and
those were
it's very
part of
obvious.
classes, I think, when we were in high school.
I think so.
And I'm sure some of our high schools now still emphasize that. But in professional settings that I've been in various meetings, bank presidents and people that do hiring HR individuals talk about the lack of soft skills
Surely.
that our younger sect seems to have now. That's a concern.
It is. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean their kids aren't. They're very talented and very well educated. They've just never really been drilled in those kind of things.
Sure.
And it's like any other skill. You have to practice, you have to prepare, and once you're competent, you become confident, and that goes a long way.
Exactly. Now it's a lot of texting and a lot of, well, I guess our generation does the emails. I think they're probably more texting, but I think you lose something in your social skills there.
You do.
And you do need those fundamental social skills when you go in for an interview. So let's say I've done my online easy template resume through Google Word or whatever. I've gone online and submitted all of that, and I've gotten an interview. Then what?
Well, once you get the interview, and I'll back up just a bit.
Okay.
That whole process of going online, some places, some organizations still ask for and require a written paper kind of application. But keep in mind as you go through that, every question asked, whether it's online or on paper, is there for a reason.
Right.
So answer it thoroughly, accurately.
Nothing blank.
Nothing blank. Read the instructions. It may tell you that if an area, a section doesn't apply, that you're to write non-applicable or NA.
Right.
Just don't leave it blank. And so once you follow all of those instructions and you do that completely and thoroughly, now you have the interview. One thing I noticed so often recently is if your interview is at 10:30, well, I'm getting there at 9:30. I'm going to show them how interested I am.
I'm ready. Yeah.
That's not what message is sent by doing that.
And not 11:30.
Right. Yeah. If you've got to be off, it's better to be a half hour early than a half hour
but
late.
Not too early.
But that simply shows that you don't follow instructions.
Gotcha.
Be there in plenty of time. Once you get the call, if you're interviewing out of town, take time if you have time. And very rarely will the call come this morning, they want to interview this afternoon. It'll be a day or two in advance. Get in your car and find out how long it will take to get from wherever you're going to be that day, whether it's at home or another place of business, to get there.
And exactly where it is. Because if you applied online, that may be your first visit.
And generally, whoever sets that interview up will ask you if you know where the office or the place is.
Right.
Be very honest. If you don't know, they'll give you directions. But find out how long it's going to take you to get there. Arrive 10 or 15 minutes early, not out of reason early.
Yeah, that would make people uncomfortable too.
It would.
Yeah. Sitting in the waiting room that long.
And then once you're called back for the interview, anytime you're talking to someone you don't know, or you might be a little bit nervous, you get the whole dry mouth thing. Generally, they will ask you, would you like a bottle of water? If you need one, accept that.
Sure.
Say, yes, please, thank you, that'd be nice. Never take your Coke, your bottle of water with you.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
But if they offer you one,
It's a little too casual.
it is.
Isn't
It
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
And then when you go in for the interview, there are so many common sense things that maybe in the excitement of, now I have my chance, or here we go, let's do this. Things like posture.
Right.
You have to
Pull those pants up. Cinch that belt.
Exactly.
Yes.
Posture, eye contact. Again, you're so breathing. Don't
Sure.
over exhilarate yourself and get out of breath, that kind of thing. And then dress dress appropriately.
That's a big one, isn't it?
With all the information we have today at our fingertips. And even if you don't have a computer, if you don't have internet, the library does.
Yes, it does.
Find out something about this organization.
Do your homework, absolutely.
Do your due diligence. At least know the mission statement. Become familiar with that. Find out what they do, what they count as their successes, how long they've been in business. Just general. You don't have to be an expert.
Right, and even about the position you're applying
Surely.
for. When they ask you, why do you want this position?
Have
you
an
need
answer.
to know what that position is about.
Yes, have an answer.
Sure.
So you've done your research, you're confident, you've done all the right things, and now you're there. Dress appropriately.
Right.
Find out how employees dress, but go a little beyond that for this first interview. It's always better to be a bit overdressed than underdressed.
It shows respect.
Sure it does.
And that goes a long way, I think.
I worked for an organization that can't be. It is impossible to have been more conservative and traditional. I mean, it was either a suit, khaki pants, Oxford Navy jacket, that kind of thing. And I'd have young men particularly come in with a 5 or 6 button jacket with an orange shirt and a purple tie. That just didn't fit the culture of our company.
Sure.
And,
know your environment.
And that sends the message that, hey, I'm really prepared for this. If you're a female, make sure there's not a lot of skin.
Sure.
No shoulders.
No modestly dressed.
It used to be that you could say, well, you need to dress at least like you would dress going to Sunday school. Can't do that anymore. That gets a little lax sometimes too.
Right, yeah.
But the notion of always trying to look and present an air of professionalism.
Sure, and that's in a professional environment. But even if you are applying for a job at Kroger or Sam's Club, Walmart, or anything, you should still, if you do, and they're kicking it old school doing that paper application, you take that in. The second you walk in that door with that application, the second you ask for that application, you're already being interviewed.
The process starts.
Yes, because even when I was just front line, when they bring in that application, I was to note on there, were they dressed appropriately? Were they polite? You are already being interviewed when you pick up and drop off an application.
And it goes without saying, you should be as well groomed as you're physically able to be.
Sure.
Don't just roll out of bed with a bed head, comb your hair,
it's not
prepare
cute, girls.
yourself.
It's not cute.
But common sense things.
Sure.
Then as you go through the interview, and one thing I always notice is that I'm not really, as an interviewer, I'm not really interested in what you know. I'm more interested in how you think and how you process information.
Interesting.
Because almost without exception, whenever you're hired, you're going to be taught the things you technically need to know. So if you've gone through the process thoroughly, if you've gotten an interview, that's certainly something to hang your hat on. You should be there very competent and very confident and ready to show your personality. And by that I mean there are so many times that I interviewed for spots that you really couldn't have training for. It was a special spot for us. And so your education background, your whole composite information is important, no question. But I'm also looking to make sure your personality fits with the department, the area.
You play well with others
Exactly.
as well. Absolutely.
So as you go through the process, smile in an appropriate way, let your personality show.
Right.
Put that interviewer, and now the trend is to be interviewed by a panel.
Right.
Of 2, 3,
I've heard
4
that.
people.
Yes. No pressure there.
Well, you know, you just have to be prepared for that. Let your personality show. Let them know that, hey, I can do this.
Right. And it isn't just about your skill set. You're absolutely right. They're looking at everything. The outward appearance, the way you present yourself, what your background is, if you have any knowledge about the position at all, any experience, but also, will you connect with the other people in that organization? Because that's important.
Surely it
You
is.
can know everything in the world about that position and be a hard worker, but if you're hateful, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be around you.
Right.
So it has to be a good fit.
It's important to know what you don't know.
Right.
And you should approach this whole interview process with the mindset that this is a partnership.
Right.
Hopefully, your career will be a long relationship with an organization who will treat you well, and that you'll perform to your best ability for them. And when all of that works together, it's an amazing thing.
Fine-tuned machine.
Surely.
Absolutely. I find there are some situations where folks just need a job. They just need a job to keep those lights on and keep those babies fed, and that's honorable, and I get that. Absolutely, I've been there. But luckily, my children are grown now. So now I'm at a place in my life where I want to be somewhere I feel comfortable, where I feel wanted, where I feel needed. It depends on where you are at the phase in your life, but even if you are taking a position or looking for a job just to keep those lights on, it's still important for our young folks to know, give it 100%.
Absolutely.
Because you may not be flipping those burgers forever. Who knows, you may. You may work your way up the line, and you may own a franchise at some point. But it's important because you start at 15, 16 years old flipping those burgers, but people are watching. And talk about people watching, let's talk about social media.
Oh, yes.
And how that affects our youth. Some of them just don't get it.
They don't understand that everything they write, everything they post, every picture they put on whatever outlet of social media they have or electronic media, even to the point of who they follow on Twitter and who follows them, it's almost all public.
Right. I wish
access.
Instagram would just disappear.
Well, I don't know about any of those.
I don't have it, but I've heard
Yeah.
about it, and I think it could probably be detrimental.
I actually had someone once, a candidate made it through the first couple interviews, and that's another thing. Don't be discouraged after you meet with an organization and an interview person. Very rarely will your first interview be with the ultimate decision maker.
Okay.
So don't be discouraged.
Sure.
If I spend 45 minutes in an interview and this afternoon I don't hear anything.
Right.
You know, that you got to flush that. Mm-hmm. But I had a young lady that after the person made it through a couple interviews, one individually and then maybe with a panel, she was assigned to go to her office, shut the door, and find out what pictures were out there, what comments had been made, if there were any inflammatory
Sure. How do they carry
positions.
themselves on
Exactly.
a personal level?
And because we want to know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've gotten through all the things you normally think are important. Now we're down to the really personal kind of things that have an impact.
Right.
They
And a
certainly
personal
do.
life is personal, absolutely. But you still, if I am an employer, I want folks working for me that represent themselves well across the board. I don't want someone with my company logo on their shirt going into Target yelling and screaming and acting like a fool over a return. You know, those types of things. Your personal life is absolutely private, but it's very important that you keep that private. And I just think social media, that veil comes down. And you want that person that's working with you or for you or beside you to be legitimate and real and honest and who they represent themselves to be. Mm-hmm. You don't want one person here and then you to be an entirely different person somewhere else. That just eventually that's going to come out.
Another thing that is so important going through this whole process is your outlook and your not necessarily just your personality, but how you leave the don't be so discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might interview for 5 or 10 spots, and you know, you go into the 8th interview, you've sent out a whole blanket of resumes and filled out applications, and so I'm sitting here, I know I'm not going to get this.
Right.
But
Well,
let's
every
get there.
interview is a chance to enhance your
Sure
interview
it-
skills.
It is.
Even enhance and work on that handshake. It's so fundamental, isn't it? But it's so important.
Handshakes, eye contact,
Right.
all those things.
Yes. Yes. I find even now in the professional world sometimes those soft skills are lacking on occasion. They are lacking. And you can tell the difference between the person who has worked their way up and is successful and the person who just does enough to get by.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
can tell the difference.
You'd be surprised the people who have an incredible resume. They have done all the things to going through the process again. You get them in the interview, and so tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I did. I worked here, and I did. You know,
Right.
be confident. Look. So, and that's a habit you just have to develop.
Right.
Because you know it's so easy just to sit and it's easier to text you or for our email.
Right. For us old school.
Yeah. Than to look you in the eye and actually have a conversation.
Right.
And we talked openly as managers about a person's conversational ability.
Right.
And if you don't have that, develop that. Talk to people who like to talk, your grandparents, older folks at church, people who understand how to engage you. And it may be uncomfortable, it may be a little difficult at times, but develop that skill.
Right.
Because eventually that pendulum will swing back. And if you have that skill that you can carry on a conversation about nothing many times, just that you're able to engage someone else, that's going to be a very valuable skill.
Sure. No matter how good you look on paper,
And you're going to stand out.
You're no matter what the position is and how good you look on paper or what your skill set is, your education level, any of that, if you just are not a good conversationalist and cannot get along with other people, eventually that's going to affect your career.
Sure it will.
It will affect your future.
Another thing we didn't talk a lot about it is your resume. When I was coming up through the system, your resume had to be 1 page.
Right. And fancy pants paper.
It's
It had to be
it's
fancy
gotta be
pants
that
paper.
parchment.
I remember sweating over that. Yes.
I would get resumes in little binders, and that none of that matters.
Really.
Yeah. I want to know if it's accurate. I want it to tell me all the things you think I need to know, so I want to talk to you more.
Right. And spell check, spell check. Please. Please.
That goes into the next thing. You know, we were all drilled. Got to have a cover letter. Cover letters are good, but they're important. But they're important for a reason you may not think. A cover letter poorly written can do far more harm.
Detrimental, absolutely.
So if you can't do it correctly, then don't include one.
Right.
Because the fact you've applied, the fact you've gone through all the hoops to get me the information, the interviewer the information, and the fact that I'm interested enough that I want to talk more. You telling me in that cover letter how badly you want to be a part of this organization really doesn't carry much weight,
Sure.
honestly. What I want to see in a cover letter is how thoroughly you can complete a thought, how well you write. And like you said, if it's poorly written, if it's poor grammar,
Right.
if the punctuation's not correct, if the sentence structure is not up to what the level of job you're applying for, then you can do more harm
Right.
with a cover letter than not having one.
And there's nothing wrong with asking for help with that, is
That
there?
was my next point.
Right.
Find out if does this sound all right? It always sounds good to you when you write it, but hand it to someone. If you don't have someone in your immediate family, take it to a teacher. Take it to someone who can give you some advice.
If I have written things and read it 10 times and it's fabulous, and then have someone else read it and I left words out. Because that flow is in my mind,
Sure.
not on the paper. So that's very important. I am so sorry, we are out of time. I don't even know how that happened. We're going to have to do a part 2. Does that sound okay?
I'm sure.
Awesome.
We'll do that.
Because we have gotten up to the interview and there's so much more to talk about. That's great information. Thank you so much. One thing that I have found over my years of experience, and I'm not going to tell you how many, is to thank people for their time. And I think that that's probably the only resource that I'm aware of that is absolutely the only limited resource, and that's time. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been my pleasure.
I know you're
appreciate you
a busy
asking.
man, and you share my passion and the Right Legacy Group, Steve Wright's passion about educating our young folks and our seasoned folks about how to better yourself, better your life, take control of your life, and make things happen.
It's organizations like yours who will step in and take an interest.
Thank you.
In people doing that, and that's very noticeable, and I applaud you all for
Awesome.
doing
Well,
that.
thank you, Rick. Appreciate your time,
Absolutely.
genuinely. And let's schedule a part 2 before you leave, and we're going to do that next month. Does that sound all right?
We'll do that.
Because there's still so much more that these folks need to know. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming and seeing us again, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Make sure you look for us, because we're going to finish this up, and we're going to give you some golden nuggets of information you can use moving forward. I'm Melanie, and thank you.